When I was a kid, the Meridian Fall Festival was the highlight of October. Pumpkin pie contests, hay rides, live music, the smell of roasted corn drifting through town. It was simple, small town perfect. Now, at 31, I don't usually come home for it. But this year, my sister Megan convinced me. She said Mom wanted both of us there, and that the town had revived the old Harvest Trail. A walking path that used to wind through the woods behind the fairgrounds before it was shut down after a bad storm years ago. New signs with new path markers, she said. They even reopened the creek crossing. It sounded harmless enough, nostalgic even. So I drove down Friday evening, leaves crunching under my tires as I pulled into town. Saturday morning was cool and bright, the kind of fall day that looks like it's been airbrushed. Families were everywhere, kids holding cider, the marching band warming up in the distance. Megan had to work one of the booths, so I went to check out the trail alone. The ranger at the start of the trail was a gray-haired man with a red flannel jacket and a name tag that said Lyle. It's a loop. Goes out to the creek and back. Should take you about an hour if you take your time. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, if you hear the whistle, head back. What whistle? I asked. He smiled. We sound one at closing, so folks don't get stuck out there after dark. No lights once the sun goes down. Seemed reasonable enough. I started walking down the path. The first stretch of the trail was easy, wide, packed dirt, and scattered leaves. Signs every 100 yards marked mile 1, 2, and so on. About 20 minutes in, I realized I hadn't seen anyone else since the start. No hikers, no families, not even a squirrel. Just the steady crunch of my boots and the low rustle of the wind through the trees. Then I noticed something odd. The trail markers, red wooden stakes, were new and clean near the entrance. But out here, some of them were different. Older, more weathered looking, like they'd been out for years. The font on the numbers didn't even match. I thought maybe they'd reused old ones, until I reached one that wasn't numbered at all. Just a faint arrow carved into the wood, pointing to the right. The map said the trail looped left. I stood there for a minute, trying to convince myself it didn't matter, but curiosity got the better of me, and I followed the old arrow. The path narrowed, the trees and brush got thicker. Eventually, I stepped out into a clearing, an open stretch of grass sloping down toward the creek. At first, it looked peaceful. The creek glinted into the sunlight, a few orange leaves drifting in the current. Then I saw something near the bank, a tarp, blue, half covered in mud. I hesitated and then walked a little closer. It was tied around something heavy. I lifted one corner, and underneath were boots, old ones, cracked leather, half rotten. No body or bones, just the boots, still upright, like whoever wore them had stepped right out of them. I stood there for a long time, listening to the wind move through the grass. Then I heard something else, faint but distinct. A whistle, 3 short blasts. I looked up. The sun was much lower than I had realized. I turned to go back, but when I looked for the path, I couldn't find it. I knew roughly which way to go, uphill towards the main trail. I walked fast, trying not to panic, but the deeper I went, the quieter it got. Then I saw a man standing between 2 trees. He wasn't moving, just watching, wearing a jacket and work gloves, gray hair under a cap. "Hey," I called. "Trail's that way, right?" He didn't answer. "Sir?" He turned slightly, enough for me to see his face. He looked like Lyle, the ranger. I felt immediate relief. Man, I thought I got turned around. He lifted his hand, slowly, and pointed behind me. I turned. The blue tarp was there again, laid across the path behind me. When I looked back, he was gone. I don't remember running, but I must have. I crashed through the brush until I found the proper trail again, wide, marked, and familiar. By this point, the sun was almost completely gone. I followed the signs back, breathing hard, until I saw the clearing by the fairground lights. A few families were still hanging around, kids laughing. Lyle was standing at the entrance booth. He smiled when he saw me. "Got caught in the loop, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "I think so. Thought I saw you out there." He frowned. "Wasn't me. I haven't left this post all day." I told him about the tarp, the boots, and the whistle. He stared for a moment, then said quietly, "We don't blow the whistle anymore." I blinked. "But I heard it," I responded. He shook his head. "We stopped after '09. A man went missing out there. His name was Ray Sutherland, a volunteer ranger. He wore the same jacket I do now." He looked past me, toward the tree line. "Every few years," he said, "someone says they see him. Always about this time of year." I laughed, even though I didn't find it funny. "So what should I do if I hear the whistle again?" He smiled without humor. "Don't follow it. Just keep walking until you see the lights." I drove back to my mom's house for that night, trying to shake it off. The boots, the tarp, the silence, and who was that man I saw in the woods? I tried to enjoy the remainder of the weekend with my mom and sister, but so many questions from that experience made it difficult to focus on anything other than those encounters that night. The last thing I remember clearly about that night was the sound of the tires on wet pavement. That steady hum you start to hear when you've been driving too long. It was mid-October, a little after midnight. I was driving home from my sister's place in Wisconsin. The plan had been to leave before dark, but I lingered. One more cup of coffee, one more story, and by the time I got on the road, the fog had already started to roll in. The highway was basically empty, just me, the dark, and the occasional truck thundering past. After 2 hours, I realized I was fighting to keep my eyes open. My phone said the next rest stop was 8 miles ahead. The place looked half abandoned, one flickering light over the vending machines, a single car parked near the bathrooms, leaves swirling across the asphalt. I guess the typical vibe you'd expect from a random rest stop in the middle of the night. I pulled in, killed the engine, and just sat there for a minute. The silence was heavy, like the whole world was asleep. Then I saw movement. Someone was standing by the soda machine, back turned, wearing a hooded jacket. I almost jumped out of the seat from the fact I didn't expect anyone to be there, and I hadn't seen another car pull in. I thought it was another driver stretching their legs that I potentially overlooked, but they didn't move, just stood there next to the vending machine. I grabbed a bottle of water from my bag, got out, and started toward the restroom. The person didn't look up. When I came back out, they were gone. I climbed back into the car, started the engine, and glanced at the passenger seat, and froze. There was a folded piece of paper taped to my passenger side window. I knew it hadn't been there before. I went outside and took it off the window. No handwriting on the outside, just a faint smudge of dirt. Inside, written in thin, shaky pen, "Don't stop again." No signature, no explanation. I practically ran back inside the driver's seat. I checked the doors to make sure they were locked and made sure all the windows were up as well. I told myself I was just tired and that I'd somehow missed it earlier. I tossed it into the cup holder and pulled back onto the highway. I don't know what I was thinking, looking back, but in the moment I was tired and just ready to be home. 15 minutes later, I noticed headlights behind me, a set of high beams that didn't back off. At first, I thought it was just a trucker coming up too close, but the lights stayed right there, perfectly lined up in my rearview mirror. I changed lanes, and the lights followed. I slowed down. So did they. Then they flashed, a total of 3 times. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, but there was no service, of course. The truck inched closer until I could see its grill in my mirror. I sped up. I was going 90, then 95. My hands were slick on the wheel from sweating. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the truck slowed. The headlights faded into the fog behind me. When I looked again, it was gone. I made it another hour before I just couldn't take it anymore. My heart was still racing, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, when I saw another rest area sign, exit 214, 1 mile. I decided to pull over again, just to breathe. This one looked newer, cleaner as well, and there were a few other cars in the lot. I parked near the building and went inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly. A janitor mopped near the sink. "Long night?" he asked, friendly enough. "Yeah," I said. "Been driving way too long." He nodded. "Storm's coming. Roads will be slick by morning." When I came back out, there was another note on my windshield. Same paper, same thin writing. "You shouldn't have stopped." I looked frantically around the parking lot for the truck that had tailed me. I didn't see it, at least not that I could tell. I finally made it home and didn't sleep much that night. I drove straight through to my apartment, every light on in the car. A few days later, I told my sister the story. She didn't laugh. Supposedly the man at the vending machine has been seen by numerous people, with many asking if he needed help, only for him to wander off without saying a word. There are a number of legends and rumors about it that I was unaware of until my sister told me. I have no idea if it is at all related to the notes on my car, or if someone just had way too much time on their hands and was playing a sick prank. It was my uncle's idea to have me house sit while he went down to Florida. "Just keep an eye on things. Make sure no one messes with the fields," he said. He owned a small farm in southern Illinois. Not big enough for real profit anymore, but enough to keep him busy. Truth be told, I think he preferred it that way. October was his favorite time of year. The whole valley turned to gold. The air smelled like burnt wood, and the corn stalks were high enough to hide in. I hadn't been back there since high school. I figured a week away from my apartment and phone wouldn't hurt. The first night was quiet. The nearest neighbor was a half a mile away, and when the sun went down, everything went black except for the outline of the barn. Before bed, I went out to check the scarecrow, just like my uncle said. It stood at the edge of the west field, a shadow against the harvest moon. Straw hat, faded overalls, and one arm missing. Birds never seemed to care about it too much. Still, he swore it helped. The trick, he used to say, is to move it every few nights. Let them think it's alive. So, I dragged it a few yards down the row and went inside. I didn't really see the point in it, but it gave me something to do, I guess. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to a sound. Not loud, just deliberate. Something brushing against the siding. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out onto the porch. The wind had definitely picked up, leaves tumbling across the dirt drive. That's when I noticed it. The scarecrow had been moved. It was standing in the middle of the yard now. Not the field, the yard. The beam of my light hit its face. I didn't move it there. I knew I didn't. I told myself it must have blown over, maybe rolled downhill, maybe kids from town playing a prank, but deep down I knew all those theories were extremely unlikely. I dragged it back out and tied it to the post again, tighter this time. Still, I couldn't sleep after that. That next morning, I found footprints, small ones, looked like bare feet, leading from the cornfield to the back steps. They stopped right at the porch. No tire tracks, no signs of an animal, just those prints pressed into the dirt, clear as day. I took a photo and sent it to my uncle. He just replied, "You're seeing things, probably raccoons." I didn't text him back. Raccoons don't have toes. The nights started feeling longer the more days I was there. The sound of the wind through the corn wasn't soothing anymore. It sounded more like whispering. I tried playing music while I cooked, keeping the radio on, leaving lights burning all night. But every time I looked out the window, I felt watched. The scarecrow hadn't moved, but the head looked turned slightly. Not toward the field, but towards the house. I almost called the sheriff, but what would I say? Someone keeps adjusting my uncle's scarecrow? They laughed me out of the county. So, I went out there again, flashlight in one hand, shovel in the other. When I got close, I noticed something new. The rope around its neck was cut. It rained hard overnight, the kind that makes the roof hum. When I went out in the morning, the scarecrow was gone. Not blown over, completely gone. The post was empty, and the rope was snapped. The footprints were back, washed faintly into the mud, leading toward the barn. I hesitated for a long time before I went in. The doors groaned on the hinges. Inside smelled of hay, oil, and damp wood. At first, I didn't see anything. Then the light caught on something. The straw hat hanging from the rafter by a nail. Under it, in the dirt, were two things: the burlap sack, crumpled like a shed skin, and a boot print. A man's. Definitely not mine. I packed to leave the next morning. I called my uncle, but he didn't answer. I left a message telling him I was done and that he needed to check his property, that someone was here messing with his scarecrow. I loaded up the truck, and as I got in, I glanced at the tree line one last time. Someone was standing there. Not close, maybe 50 yards away. Still, close enough to see the flannel shirt, the shirt that belonged to the scarecrow. I slammed the door, floored it down the drive, and didn't look back. I never heard anything else from my uncle regarding this. Maybe the scarecrow was returned, and nothing ever happened after I was there. Just the fact that I knew someone was on his property that week, messing with me, made what was supposed to be a peaceful week away from everything one of the most stressful weeks of my life.